Dalton home that she leased to Mayor Tiffany Henyard has filed eviction papers. She says Henyard has not paid her rent. And
the latest drama surrounding Dalton's so-called super mayor, Tiffany Henyard, has brought local governance to a new level of spectacle, with residents and trustees alike questioning her leadership in what appears to be an era marked by relentless controversy and questionable decisions. Since taking office, Henyard's term has been mired in a series of public scandals that have led many to wonder if Dalton is now more reality TV show than functioning village. From facing eviction to accusations of misusing public funds, her administration seems embroiled in one chaotic situation after another. Henyard's personal troubles, including reports of overdue rent and a contentious relationship with her landlord, have been splashed across public forums, creating an image of instability that hardly aligns with her role as a community leader. In one especially controversial incident, her landlord publicly announced her intentions to evict Henyard due to unpaid rent, a surprising turn for someone who holds such a high office. This incident only added fuel to the fire for her critics, who argue that a mayor struggling to manage her personal finances may also be unable to handle the town's budget responsibly. The concerns go beyond her financial woes, touching on the fundamental issues of transparency and accountability. Regular township meetings, which are expected to address public concerns and foster constructive dialogue, have instead devolved into shouting matches and chaotic scenes, more reminiscent of a reality TV episode than a local government assembly. Trustees and attendees alike have reported high tensions and confrontational exchanges, with Henyard often at the center of these conflicts. Her alleged tendency to shut down opposing voices or issue ultimatums has only served to heighten the mistrust brewing among residents. Many Dalton residents are fed up, feeling that their voices are not being heard and their concerns dismissed. The mayor's apparent disregard for transparency is exacerbated by rumors of misappropriated funds and lavish spending. Her administration has faced scrutiny over unaccounted expenses, and recent reports suggest she may even be under investigation, with federal agencies reportedly issuing subpoenas for records related to her spending. Meanwhile, Dalton's finances are reportedly in disarray, with the village grappling with mounting debt and unpaid vendors. Instead of addressing these issues head-on, Henyard has doubled down, announcing her bid for re-election in a move that has shocked many given the current circumstances. While she still retains some loyal supporters, a growing number of residents and trustees alike are calling for her resignation, arguing that her presence is only serving to deepen the town's problems rather than solve them. With an election on the horizon, Henyard faces an uphill battle as her opponents gear up to challenge her for the mayoral seat, vowing to restore order and transparency to Dalton's government. Her administration's trajectory thus far paints a troubling picture for the community, leaving residents to wonder if her tenure is doing more harm than good, and whether Dalton can recover from the controversies that have marred her leadership.
South suburban politician Tiffany Henyard appears to have lost control of both.
You would probably anticipate the typical bureaucratic back and forth during this township meeting, including conversations about budgetary allocations, local issues, and maybe a few little arguments or regular reports. However, this was not your average gathering of the local government. Rather, you entered what can only be called a live action show, where a train disaster was being shown in real time. Tension was already raging, and it was immediately apparent that this was no typical meeting. That night, Supervisor Tiffany Henyard, who is already facing a long list of legal issues related to unpaid rent, chose to play the power game. Henyard appeared resolved to maintain her hold on the township at all means, consequences be damned, despite the fact that she was already being criticized for allegedly mismanaging township funds and that her leadership was causing growing worries. The gathering was clouded by Henyard's contentious past, so everyone was closely observing her every action. Officials and residents alike prepared for fireworks, and they were not let down. Instead of a peaceful conversation about community needs and governance, what happened next was nothing short of mayhem. The tone was established as soon as Henyard took the floor. Rather than encouraging discussion, her aggressive demeanor silenced anyone who tried to challenge her judgment or power. The room was virtually buzzing with the anxiety. Henyard controlled the discussion with a forcefulness that allowed little room for counterpoints and gave a flurry of instructions in an attempt to maintain her position of authority. Many questioned whether this was the leader they had elected or whether, in the middle of her personal and legal troubles, she had totally forgotten about the needs of the township. It became evident from this display that what could have been a productive conversation had devolved into a confrontation characterized by authority-driven, almost theatrical control. The scene left spectators stunned, as though they were witnessing a live-action skip fire rather than a civil township meeting.
You're making a late appearance at the Dalton Village Board meeting this evening. That meeting was being held at the Park District building since Village Hall cannot legally accommodate the crowds.
There is a noticeable sense of tension when the board meeting begins because feelings are already running high. Growing allegations that Mayor Tiffany Henyard has embezzled government monies and abused her power for personal benefit have put her in a precarious position with her fellow trustees. This mistrust has damaged her connections on the board, creating a tense atmosphere before the meeting even starts. Trustees Kiana Caro wanted to attend remotely via phone, which is a common request in most situations, but Henyard promptly denies her request. Instead of making accommodations, Henyard rejects Caro's need to participate remotely, stating that she would have attended in person if she had been serious about board business. This establishes the tone for a confrontational session and highlights Henyard's apparent unwillingness to cooperate or compromise with her co-workers. It is immediately apparent that Henyard is there to exert control rather than to encourage a fruitful dialogue. She sends a message that anyone who challenges her authority will be met with contempt by turning down Caro's request. Henyard's strategies throughout the meeting demonstrate a small-minded, controlling demeanor, highlighting her disdain for anyone who dared to disagree with her or even look for other ways to contribute to the board.
Fortunately, we knew it was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done. So, but like I said, you have just some kind of...
Keep in mind that this meeting was about more than just Henyard impressing the trustees. It was also about approving the minutes from the last meeting and discussing a projected tax refund for residents, which should have been a major topic of discussion. You would think that local leaders would set aside their differences and work together for the benefit of the community, even though the tax refund was estimated to be worth over $2 million to Dalton citizens. With Henyard in charge, this isn't the case though. The gathering quickly spirals out of control. Trustee Chris Gonzalez leads without a quorum, a vote or a tax refund after deciding he has had enough of Henyard's antics. Henyard, of course, tries to place the responsibility elsewhere, claiming that Gonzalez and the other trustees are unwilling to carry out the people's work. However, when Henyard is in charge and handles everything as if it were her own private matter, who can really do anything?
Is it the reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is?
What was it for?
It was for shirts. That's what.
Not to mention that Henyard is addressing her personal problems during the entire conversation. Yes, after allegedly failing to pay rent for months, the super mayor may also be evicted from her home. Janetta Hall, her landlord, who formerly considered Henyard a friend, has had enough. According to Hall, Henyard has not paid rent since August, as has her lover Kamal Woods, who makes a nice livelihood for himself working for the township. They also allegedly altered the locks on H's property, so she couldn't leave. Can you picture the mayor renting your property, then evicting you from your house and refusing to pay rent? Who could blame Hull for claiming she is currently over $5,000 behind on her rent and is taking legal steps to have Henyard and Woods evicted? Despite allegedly receiving over $300,000 in taxpayer-funded salaries, Henyard and Woods are struggling to make ends meet. As a mayor, you would think they would uphold positive citizen standards, but you don't see that with these people. They just feel like they can do whatever they want. Irritated.
Who would make a one-day purchase of over $40,000 to Amazon? And the main thing is...
Therefore, not only are the local trustees and citizens fed up with Henyard, but she also faces the very real possibility of being evicted from her home in addition to acting like a tyrant at township meetings. Henyard's spending habits are also being investigated by the federal authorities. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's examination of Dalton's finances has produced startling preliminary findings. Dalton's general fund balance was above $5 million in 2022, but by May 2024, it could drop to a $360 million deficit. How could it have happened that way? Lightfoot's question revealed that Henyard had been making a number of purchases with the village's credit card. Amazon, name it. Target, Walgreens, Wayfair, and Henyard dropped $43,000 on Amazon in one day in January 2023. As of now, Henyard has not explained the $43,000. She has also reportedly used public monies to pay for lavish trips, including stays at the Marriott in New York City and the Four Seasons in Atlanta. Henyard says that these excursions are for the people, but how many Dalton inhabitants are really benefiting from their mayor's first-class holiday while the community is still in debt? The context of Dolan's financial situation just emphasizes how ridiculous this purchase is. In addition to the police overtime scan, Henyard's lavish expenditure of what ought to be public funds feels like a smack in the face to the community. In addition to exhausting its reserves, the village has been leaking funds from nearby suppliers who haven't received payment in months, resulting in a backlog of more than 6 million checks that haven't been paid. Some workers are apparently worried about whether they will even receive their paychecks in the following weeks, as if that weren't awful enough. SC Lightfoot found that 2 police officers were paid overtime in excess of their actual annual salary, while one officer with a basic salary of $87,395 earned an extra $11,800 in overtime. Another cop with a base income of $735.15 received $10,277. Because Hen uses the police as her personal security detail, the town is clearly losing money, and there are fewer police officers available to defend the residents. Critics point out that Dalton itself lacks a police presence, especially during a period when crime is on the rise, but Henyard has a sizable security detail. Simultaneously, Henyard keeps defending her actions by saying that these expenses are required to draw in investment and cultivate relationships for the village. However, how many relationships were made with those first-class flights, and how much money did those opulent hotel stays actually bring in? For good cause, Dalton's citizens are becoming less trusting in Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership. Many people think that her frequent travels, which are purportedly paid for by government dollars, are more for her own comfort than for the town's actual economic gain. In the meantime, vital services are being discontinued, and the town's infrastructure is rapidly deteriorating. Recent water main breaks, for example, have left entire neighborhoods without consistent access to clean water. Residents are not persuaded by Henyard's attempts to attribute these problems on required budget cuts. Many people are doubting her goals because the deteriorating infrastructure is not a recent issue. It has been getting worse during her term. Calls for her resignation have increased in volume and are no longer limited to private or quiet discussions in light of these recent occurrences and growing dissatisfaction. Some vocal residents have even gone so far as to refer to Henyard as the worst mayor in America, a moniker that more accurately captures their indignation than merely a catchphrase. Social media has made community feeling more apparent. One recent YouTube comment summed up the annoyance quite succinctly: "Arrest this clown already." Despite its harshness, the remark reflects the public's outrage about Henyard's alleged financial mismanagement and disregard for the actual needs of the people living in Dalton. She was referred to as the worst enemy of the residents by a mile by another commenter on the same video. The drama, poor leadership, and never-ending justifications that have come to define Henyard's government have worn down the residents of Dalton. Residents fear that her style of governing would just cause more problems rather than advancements as her re-election campaign approaches. Despite the growing scandals surrounding her government, Mayor Tiffany Henyard is not compromising. Rather, she is strengthening her stance, announcing herself as Dalton's super mayor and preparing for a re-election campaign. She recently announced on Facebook that she will be running for a second term, portraying herself as the object of a smear campaign rather than a public figure who is the subject of grave accusations. Henyard tries to recast these conflicts as insignificant matters in comparison to her purported commitment to the public good, insisting that they are only distractions. But while federal investigations into her financial practices have only gotten more severe over the past year, the scrutiny is only getting more fierce. As part of a larger inquiry that looks into Henyard's spending habits, political committee, and even her charity, subpoenas have actually been sent this year to both her administration in Dolton and her parallel position as supervisor in Thornton Township. Both locals and opponents have expressed concern about her administration due to serious concerns about fiscal management and claims of misusing public monies. The FBI and other agencies are apparently looking through financial records to find out where those cash intended for community services and improvements are really going, while she keeps presenting herself as a victim of political sabotage. Examining any possible overlap or misuse across her several responsibilities and related organizations, the examination seems extensive. Residents are becoming more and more irate with Henyard's contemptuous attitude and evasive answers as a result of this in-depth examination of her finances. Opponents of Henyard contend that her smear campaign allegations are a calculated attempt to evade responsibility, citing the ongoing federal investigations and subpoenas as clear proof that the problems with her administration are more than just unfounded rumors. Residents of Dolton are left wondering about the true results of her public initiatives and whether the money allotted for them has been used appropriately as these investigations continue. Henyard's re-election campaign will therefore have a challenging path ahead of it, as a web of court investigation and public skepticism has severely damaged her reputation. Her assertions of commitment to the community are being bolstered by the federal investigations, which only serve to fuel the flames. The growing pressure from several investigating agencies indicates that these accusations are anything but unjustified, even as she rallies her supporters around the theme of perseverance against bogus attacks. It remains to be seen if her super mayor persona can withstand such intense examination. Henyard hinted that she might try to have individuals responsible for what she saw as a power and money grab arrested during a recent Facebook Live tirade. The message was clear: you'll pay the price. She did not identify the people or the offenses they were accused of committing. Henyard is also exploiting her position to stifle her political opponents, as if that weren't enough. How long can she truly continue this tactic, which is a classic maneuver from someone who believes they are untouchable? The residents of Dolton are ultimately the ones who suffer the most. The town is in debt by more than $5 million. Vital services are being reduced, and there is a genuine feeling that things are getting out of hand. The outcome of this is uncertain when her re-election campaign formally begins. We've been covering the questionable expenditures of a lawmaker from the South Suburban named Tiffany Henyard for a year, but we only had half the story. Do you believe Henyard will be able to maintain her job in spite of the mounting scandals, or will the people of Dolton finally have enough? What about the federal inquiry? Will Henyard face actual repercussions, or will she keep evading responsibility? Even though Henyard presents herself as the super mayor, the village's residents truly have the power to determine its future. Kindly provide your thoughts in the space provided for comments below.